So Ireland was partitioned in 1921-1922 after a national war of liberation. But the problems that continue today, especially in the north of Ireland, come from the policy of British partial colonisation of the north of Ireland and what was called the Plantation of Ulster. So what we had were English and Scottish settlers brought in to manage land, agricultural land, towns and villages that had been Catholic Indigenous Irish and were ethnically cleansed for the purposes of creating a stronger hold for the British establishment in Ireland. Now, this led to, if there were 5 million people in Ireland before 1922, we ended up with approximately 1.5 million in the new state created by Britain called Northern Ireland, which I don't accept, and 3.5 million people in the Republic of Ireland. So that started like sectarian ethnic divisions, which hadn't really existed prior to the colonisation process. What you had was the indigenous population being militarily oppressed by a foreign government. And you had the rebellions against that. But then once you created this sectarianisation of society, it in itself led to social divisions and also political and religious divisions, because the English and Scottish settlers were Protestant by religion and English by their political associations, and the Irish were Catholic by their religion and ethnically Irish by their culture and language and music and clan system and basically everything that had gone before the British occupation. So this is one of the... So after the division, what you had was a divided society where pro-British Protestants lived in one part of the city really, and pro-Irish Catholics, nationalists lived in another part. And as part of that, there was always sectarian tension, and there was always the possibility of intercommunal sectarian strife. Now, in 1969, we had really basically 50 years of unionist one-party misrule, where the Catholic Irish population were treated as second-class citizens. They were discriminated against in jobs and housing and opportunities in life as such. And the civil rights movement then came into being in 1968-69. This called basically for a democratisation of society and the end of the one-party rule at Stormont, the local assembly, and one man, one vote, equal fair allocation in housing and employment, and basically an end to discrimination against what was probably 40% of the population here. So the imbalance that came with partition was deliberately created to create a pro-British state. And then with the civil rights movement in 1968-69, their call for the democratisation of society was met with violence from the state, and as such that led to ethnic tensions, the heightening of sectarian divisions. And we now have what are called the peace walls. These are in Belfast. This is the one between the Irish Falls Road and British Shankill Road. So we can see here that this wall is approximately 1.5 miles long. So this is the Loyalist Unionist community on the right. And behind these walls are the nationalist Irish community of the Clonard and the Falls Road. So as you look up the street, you can see the taxis that are making a very healthy profit from the tours. This wall was originally put up by British Army sappers. You can see here that this is like metal, and this is a concrete slab that has been slipped in. And then we have another metal barrier. So you can picture the two metal barriers put in place as almost like clips, and this concrete wall being inserted between it. But that wasn't enough to stop the violence, because you could still throw bombs, petrol bombs, bricks and bottles over the wall. So then they raised it a second time, as you can see, with the green fencing, the British Army green fencing, and then the further fencing on the top. So I've read that I've lived in Belfast all my life, but I've read that there are over, I think, 60 peace walls, we're 25 years into the peace process, but a lack of violence does not mean peace. It just means that there's a lack of violence within society. But we're going to go around shortly and see what's behind this wall, and maybe further explain that basically with the colonisation of the north of Ireland and with the sectarianisation of society, what we have is a colonial rump that's been here from the 17th, 16th, 17th century. It spends its time keeping British policy and their troops and people who come along and see these walls, you know, don't understand fully the complications of what's happening, but this is what we have, and this is what has divided the people. Colonisation, sectarianisation of society, a rump unionist loyalist group that refuses to integrate with their Irish Catholic neighbours, and basically, you know, this will never change here.